Yes, people. Welcome to another episode of The Point on Affinity Xtra with me, David. Hope you're going to get the point on this one today, because today we're going to be talking about letting off steam. Yeah, letting off steam, a bit of anger. Any of us have a bit of anger. There's some healthy biblical principles that we can use in order to let off a bit of steam. Now, before we get into it, I just want to say it's important. This is important, and I'm not going to make light of it as much as I like to joke at times, but it's important to allow ourselves to have the room and freedom to let off steam, to let God know how it really is, how we're really feeling. And it's important at the same time to develop healthy strategies of dealing with anger. Disclaimer, I'm no trained counselor or therapist, but I am a trained minister, and so I might have a little bit of understanding of when it comes to biblical principles and what the Bible has to say and how we let off a little steam. So first things first, anger is throughout the Bible. We have a tension in how we manage that all. And I know we always like to use the phrase righteous anger, which is true, but sometimes it always kind of makes us, it kind of come fluffy. You know, you know, don't let the sun go down when you're vexed and all that kind of stuff. That's all true, but sometimes the reality is that's not always the case. But then what about a different type of anger? What about that sense of injustice and vexedness and just downright just things are just, you got to call it for what it is. And that's what I kind of want to look at. So the Bible lets us do that. But in particular, there's certain Psalms that allow us to really vent. And there's certain Psalms that show how the people were really feeling, how vexed they really were. And they didn't hold back. They didn't hold back to God. They didn't hold back on what they were saying in regards to the circumstances. And these particular Psalms, I call them bad mind Psalms. But the right word is imprecatory Psalms. And these Psalms, they're like laments, they're honest expressions of pain in the face of suffering, of grief, anger. And when you see why they're called bad mind Psalms, because they're just really looking to really do harm to people. They want to say, God, strike them down, do this, do that, and all the rest of it. They're not holding back. And I think it's important that we allow ourselves to not only just read, but also to sit on those Psalms as well, to really consider how important they are and what they can teach us today. I'm going to go to my favorite one of the bad mind Psalms, I call it. And you'll know this for most people, depending on how old you are, you would have heard this, but in a song, but you wouldn't have heard all of it neither. And it's Psalm 137. And I have to read it. There's no way I cannot read this Psalm. I have to read it. And I'm going to be reading from the New Living Translation, Psalm 137. And listen closely at what it says. Beside the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept as we thought of Jerusalem. We put away our harps, hanging them on the branches of poplar trees. For our captors demanded a song from us. Our tormentors insisted on a joyful hymn. Sing us one of those songs of Jerusalem. But how can we sing the songs of the Lord while in a pagan land? If I forget you, Jerusalem, let my right hand forget how to play the harp. May my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth. If I fail to remember you, if I don't make Jerusalem my greatest joy. Oh Lord, remember what the Edomites did. On the day the armies of Babylon captured Jerusalem, destroy it, they yelled. Level it to the ground. Oh Babylon, you will be destroyed. Happy is the one who pays you back for what you have done to us. Happy is the one who takes your babies and smashes them against the rocks. Oh my gosh. Oh my, happy is the one who takes your babies and smashes them. Listen, I'm not advocating genocide or anything. I'm just reading scripture here. Do you understand what they're saying here, innit? They're talking about revenge, they're talking about anger, they're talking about violence at the highest level, retribution at the highest level. And this is what the Psalms is meant to do. It's meant to evoke that sense of anger and frustration and everything, and the suffering and the grief and the pain and the madness and everything, and address it to God. To make God know this is the situation of what we're feeling and what we're going through. And this rage and anger and vengeance is all present in these Psalms. I get excited because it's a madness when you look at it really. And I never hear this read before prayer. I never hear it read or for a little devotion. We stay clear of this. But for those who might know, remember this was a song by Bonnie M. Don't judge my voice. You remember the song? By the rivers of Babylon, where we sat. Listen, they only sang like 2 verses. I don't remember hardly any of the other stuff in these Psalms. They don't talk about the vengeance. They don't. But why is it? Why do we leave, to me, the most crucial part out in the Psalms that can teach us so much about how we deal with anger? We say that God is big enough that God can handle anything. So why can't God handle a Psalms or handle us saying, God, I want people dead. I want people gone for what they've done to us. Why can't God handle that? And it's an important strategy and principle that we allow ourselves to vent and to go through this process, because God is able to deal with it. It's massive. And as I said, I'm not advocating, because when I read that, I think, why, how much, I think if anything, how much for us, Black British or from the Caribbean, can identify, how much the Black diaspora can identify with this Psalms. A people that's displaced, a people whose culture, history and identity has been robbed, and yet we're told just to grin teeth, skin teeth, carry on, make a success of your life in Babylon. I'm just saying, it can resonate with us today. But there's also, people will say, well, that's the Old Testament, you know, the Old Testament, and people like to use the whole adage, you know, the Old Testament, you see God as a God of wrath and all that stuff, and in the New Testament, God is a God of love, mercy and justice. And we just missed the point. We just missed the point, because if we really know Jesus, we see that Jesus didn't ramp neither. And I say that because there's many times we see Jesus was angry. And I'm not going to talk about the times where, the common time where we see Jesus in the temple and he just flips everything over and he's going on a mad one. But also, Jesus displays anger in some of the things that he says. When you look closely, Jesus is very harsh. You don't hold back. And there's one incident in particular that Jesus shows, and his tongue doesn't hold back. He lays it out raw. And this is in the Gospel of Luke. And it's when his disciples or people come up to Jesus and say, you got to leave because Herod is trying to kill you. And Jesus is vexed. Jesus is having none of it. And if we look closely in this particular exchange where they come and say, look, Herod is trying to kill you, you need to leave. Before that, Herod has John the Baptist killed. So Jesus is aware Herod has killed John the Baptist, beheaded him. And remember, this is Jesus' cousin. John the Baptist has baptized him. And this is the person that was the forerunner for Christ. So imagine the amount of emotion and everything that Jesus is feeling, that Herod has killed his cousin, has killed the person that's baptized him, and now he's being warned that he needs to leave because Herod's going to kill him. And there's a saying, and there's in chapter 13, verses 31 to 32. This is what Jesus says. When they come and say, leave this place, Herod is going to kill you. He says, go tell that fox, I will keep on driving out demons and healing people today and tomorrow. And on the third day, I reach my goal. Now, I really don't feel most of the commentaries on this. I don't agree with a lot of the commentaries, because what they try to make out is Jesus is confronted with this news, and it's like Jesus being all soft and fluffy. And how we read it, oh, go tell that fox that I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Like when you look closely, and this is where I'm going to get a bit geeky and look at, when you look at in the Greek, that word, the word fucks, that analogy, that's a derogatory word Jesus is using. It's you know what, you know how I look at it? It's like Jesus saying, go tell Herod that dirty, nasty jankro, that I'm still doing what I'm doing. And if you're not from the Caribbean, if you've been called a jankro, it's a shocking insult. And if you don't know what a jankro looks like, Google jankro or carrion crow, and it's basically it's a vulture that is one of the ugliest, horriblest birds you will ever see, and it has no redeeming qualities. A jankro is like, it feeds off dead bodies. It has no qualities that it's like, and if you see the image of a jankro, it's not a nice thing. And when we know the word, the facts on the understanding and the analogy during that time of what it meant, it's like Jesus is saying Herod is less than a human or less than a man. He's fully insulting him. And so it's important to understand, like, even language that Jesus uses, it shows like we can be vexed and vent and say how it really is. And I know we don't like to have that conversation because we sometimes think like, you know, let our conversation be seasoned with salt. Absolutely. But at the same time, we have to understand that God has made us to be creatures and beings with emotions. And like how we see Jesus show anger and frustration, like the Psalms help us to go through that process of venting injustice, venting anger and frustration. That's what we have to do. These are healthy strategies that allow us to do that. Don't keep it bottled up, but that we can actually reason, that we can cry out to God. And remember, the Psalms are meant to be shouted in certain instances. There's certain Psalms that are meant to be shouted. Some are meant to be sung in a particular way. Some are meant to be recited poetically. And we've lost that art of what it really means to grapple with the Psalms. And I see this as a Psalms. This is a Psalm, Psalms 137. You're meant to shout this, and you're meant to really say how it is, because of the madnesses that has gone on. And I'm going to finish here and say, remember, there are healthy strategies and biblical principles that help us to deal with anger. However, as I said, I am not a trained counselor or therapist, but if you do have certain anger issues, I'll advise you seek professional help. And that's another thing we don't like to talk about, especially in our community. We don't like to talk about seeing therapists or counselors or to sit down and to talk about our issues, because a lot of us have pent up anger and issues that we don't want to address. And we have to. There's a whole heap of issues that we have to address. There's a whole heap of trauma we carry around with us in our bodies, in our psyche, in our everything. And then sometimes we just pass on to our kids. We pass on to our bedrooms. We need to stop that. But this is one way that we can deal with anger and deal with frustration and even trauma we can deal with, is by calling it out and letting God hear it, because he's already big enough to hear it. So I hope you've got the point. Bless, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this content. If you liked it, please don't forget to like, subscribe and make a comment down below. Or even more so, check out our website www.affinityextra.com for more information.